Timcast IRL will be live in Miami with Patrick Bet David, Donald Trump Jr., Matt Gaetz, and Luke Rudkowski. Join us there. Get your tickets by clicking the link in the description below or by going to timcast.com. This is awesome. This is the coolest thing ever. From KOB4, gun owners rally in Old Town to protest public health order. You know, they don't want to, they just call it what it is. The headline should read, gun owners defy unconstitutional and criminal action by governor. But maybe a little bit strong from me, but I think that's the fair headline. You've got this video. We've got Ford Fisher as well. Many people openly carrying in defiance of the governor's decree. Good for them. And the police are basically backing away from this. They're saying that not that they're not going to enforce it. The statement from the sheriff was effectively that, but it was a little tepid. So we'll see. They say more than 100 people openly carried guns in Old Town as they protested Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham's recent controversial move on firearms. You see, they try very hard to avoid calling it what it is. We're not here to cause any issues. We're just here to, express our amendment rights. And we'll go from there. It was a rally against part of Grisham's public health emergency on gun violence, specifically the part where she banned carrying guns, either through open or concealed carry permits in Bernalillo County and the city of Albuquerque for 30 days. No constitutional right, in my view, including my oath, is intended to be absolute. There are restrictions on free speech. There are restrictions on freedom. That's what she said. My jaw dropped for a Second Amendment to be suspended. It's unconstitutional. We got to put it that way. A lot of people feel that way, said Derek. Now, here's the funny thing about no rights are absolute. Yes, it means due process of law, not I hereby decree you can't keep and bear arms in defiance of your own state's constitution and your federal constitution, our federal constitution. So this is the story that we got. Sheriff in New Mexico's most populous county rejects governor's gun ban, calling it unconstitutional. Reject, because what does that really mean? The current rumor that we're hearing, and I think I have it here from the paper. I don't know what this publication is. I'm not familiar with it. I don't know how accurate this is. All I know is this is being circulated. It may or may not be true. Take it with a grain of salt. However, in it, they say that they reached out. It's the paper in Albuquerque. That's what it's called, the paper. Reached out to Carolyn Sweeney, a Lujan Grisham spokeswoman, who said the order is being enforced and citations will be forthcoming from the state police. To ensure officer safety, we will not be providing additional details at this time. So I'm wondering if the move they make is to pull up videos of people who were openly carrying and then privately go after them. So imagine this. Someone goes to the rally and they're openly carrying legally, but the governor has issued a decree. They're on camera, facial recognition, whatever. They know who the person is. They issue a warrant for their arrest, and under what law or whatever. It's not going to be for open carrying. There's going to be some violation like defiance of public health emergency, section whatever. The cops are going to show up to the guy's house and say, we have a warrant for your arrest for, defiance of executive order, and list a bunch of charges, none of which will be having a gun. Then the person's going to be like, what are you talking about? And the cop's going to say, listen, man, I don't know who you are. I don't know what you did. I know you're under arrest. So while many people are saying the cops won't enforce this, cops will defy it. I'm like, yeah, but what happens when some random 28-year-old cop is told we got a warrant for a guy on disorderly conduct, felony disorderly on state grounds? And he goes, sounds good to me. They're going to start getting arrested. But we'll see. I'm glad to see that people are standing up to this. It's blowing up in the governor's face. Democrats are angry about it, but
Well, it should blow up in the governor's face. This is another one of these lead through crisis situations. We saw this with Biden. We saw this. Kamala Harris was talking about this. They were listing off, this was pre-COVID even. They were listing off public health emergencies. They were talking about climate change, public health emergency, racism. Then they threw COVID into the mix. They threw guns into the mix. And it's like you were saying, like as soon as you declare something a public health emergency, they start suspending all of our civil liberties. And you remember even during COVID, you had sheriffs and police officers saying that they were not going to enforce lockdown orders, but people were getting arrested anyway. There's still people who have been charged with that stuff and been prosecuted. And that stuff stands.
Yeah. And I have to say, I love 2A people. Like this idea that there's just a bunch of them, like openly carrying guns and everything is fine. Like, you're not hearing anything about any violence that came out of this rally. I think it's such an interesting display because if the government of New Mexico is taking such a drastic and expansive interpretation of public health emergency, it's cool to see them say, well, we're just going to protest and demonstrate publicly rather than say, well, I'm scared of what will happen. I think that's the sort of only I don't know, white pill in this situation.
The other thing too, though, is remember in Lansing, Michigan, in April 2020, you had a lot of people showing up at the Capitol saying, we're opposed to the lockdown orders. We're not going to do this anymore. They went into the Capitol and they were called white supremacists. You know, these people are going to get called names. And the other thing, too, is like, even if they're out there today and the sheriff says, oh, maybe we're not going to prosecute, you don't know, like they could come to your door in 2 months. Yeah. There's people now getting arrested for 9/11. They've arrested over 1,200 people for that. You don't even know.
9/11?
9/11, whatever it is. Not
the other
9/11.
It is obnoxious to use dates to reference events.
They actually, there's only a couple of people who were arrested now for 9/11 and they haven't been prosecuted. So they're still hanging out in Guantanamo and prosecutors are looking at plea deals for those people.
But don't worry, we got all of the January 6th
I have 9/11 in my head because it's my birthday. So I apologize.
I've heard stories of people who were on the Capitol grounds that nothing ever happened. Right. So like a year ago, there were stories people would say where it's like, oh, I knew someone who was at that rally and they were walking around the grass, but they never got charged or arrested. They'll show up at your house.
Well, and then they just arrested Owen Schroyer. They had arrested him previously.
He's getting sentenced tomorrow. Yeah.
They're trying to sentence him to 120 days. Mm-hmm. He didn't go into the Capitol. He was hanging out outside. And part of the things
and yelling generic anti-establishment, like revolutionary commentary.
And then the sentencing.
I think he said death to tyrants.
And he said the Democrats were tyrants. I mean,
but in the sentence, they also reference things that he said on air.
Yeah, I mean,
before, during, and after.
Yes. Yeah, if you read the statement from the DOJ, they say in the months leading up, and they said he made January 6th happen. I mean, they are trying to make another person they're pinning this on, and rightly so, his attorney has responded with, you are trying to violate his free speech rights and to make this more than what it is. They also say, he's been on pre-trial, it's supervised pre-trial supervision for the last 2 years. So surely he shouldn't have to also go to jail.
But this is what people in New Mexico need to think about as well. One, I think it's good that Democrats are on board with rejecting the governor's decree. So they're probably, these people who protested, probably going to be totally safe. If these rumors are true, it's going to get scary because it's not going to be a cop showing up saying, you defied the governor's order and carried a weapon. You're under arrest. And then the person films themselves and they're like, look what's happening now. It's going to be like, you have a bench warrant for your arrest. Mm-hmm. Why? What did I do? That's for the court. I don't know, man. All I know is I'm told you got a warrant and you're coming with me.
I've been rereading The Trial, the Kafka novel, and this guy gets arrested and he gets put on trial and they never tell him the charges.
Right.
They never tell him what he did wrong, and he's trying to navigate the court and figure things out and trying to understand how he's being treated, trying to navigate having a job. He doesn't want to tell anybody that this is happening to him because he's embarrassed and he's ashamed everywhere he looks. And the more he digs into his trial and what's going on, the more he realizes that literally everyone is against him. Everyone has been spying on him this whole time. And it just has seemed like the exact right time to reread The Trial. And the more I listen to it, because I've been doing it on audiobooks, the more I listen to it, I'm just like, dang, Kafka knew what he was talking about. Yep. Exactly. We're looking at this now.
What was his political...
Kafka's
what year, what country was he from?
He was from the Czech Republic, then Czechoslovakia. He lived in Prague. He was basically an insurance clerk who was writing on the side. I don't know what his political leanings were. He was essentially anti-authoritarian.
Was he during the Soviet era?
It was, when was he writing? What was it like?
Franz Kafka.
30s?
1880 to 1925.
There you go.
That's when he was alive. He was only 40.
Yeah, I was reading him in high school. Because I was really intrigued by a couple of his stories. Metamorphosis and The Hunger Artist were the ones that really, I was like, whoa, what's that about? And then The Castle. But yeah, he was anti-authoritarian. And if you look at his work, it's just like this crushing state. And there you are, just this individual trying to have an existence you know? And in many cases, just a quiet existence without being bothered, without being any, in trouble at all, without having anybody come at you. And it's just the state swirls around you, eats you up, and destroys you.
I think a lot of people have this misunderstanding about how the system works when it's working against you. I think a lot of people, especially people who watch the show, probably get it. But I feel like the average person, they assume that if you do something wrong, the cops show up and they say you did something wrong. They don't realize that sometimes you're in the wrong place at the wrong time and you get arrested for no reason. Mm-hmm. There's a guy at Occupy Wall Street who, this is a hilarious story, by the way. He's a middle-aged guy wearing a suit with gray hair. And he is inside a bodega, for those that don't know, a corner store, buying an orange, I think it was a Fanta. The police use that orange kettling net, they call it, to wrap around protesters. So to stop people from leaving when they say it's an unlawful assembly and you're all under arrest, the cops go from one side of the building and they make a half moon around all these people and the door. And the guy walks out of the convenience store drinking his orange Fanta on break from work. And he's confused, like, what's going on? Why am I in this thing? He can't go back inside. They're like, no, you can't come in. And then he goes to the cop and says, hey, I was just in the store buying a drink. And they're like, shut your mouth. And he's like, I'm not a protester. I'm just a guy on break. I'm drinking. They're like, you're under arrest. Shut your mouth. Most of the cops holding the netting won't say anything. He yells at the supervisor. They ignore him. He got arrested.
He got arrested for literally drinking an orange Fanta.
Because he walked out of a store into the area they had corralled. And the police said, anyone inside this is under arrest. Even though they got some guy who was just drinking a soda. Doesn't matter. And so he goes to jail. He can't tell his work what happened. And this is what I was told, right? He was at a meeting in the city screaming at the top of his lungs to the police about what they had done to him. And the cops were just like, we literally do not care what you think. It's a city of millions of people, and you are one guy with no authority and no power, so you can shut your mouth. You're meaningless. They didn't say that literally, but that's basically it.
And they just paid off BLM protesters who were torching cop cars.
Well, this
millions
was
of dollars.
Occupy.
Yeah, I know, but they just did this.
Right.
They paid off they're not protesters. They're like militant BLM riders. They paid them off millions of dollars.
There's a lot of stories like that where the police arrest random people. There was a guy named Alex Arbuckle who was taking pictures of Occupy Wall Street. He's standing on the sidewalk when the protesters get, circled or whatever. And a cop walks up to him while he's not part of the protest and on the sidewalk away from the protest and arrests him. He was a different officer was told to sign for the arrest and fabricate a statement as to why he should be arrested. And the fabricated statement was that he was obstructing the roadway like all the other protesters. The funny thing is, this guy went down there to tell the police's side of the story on the protests because he felt it wasn't being accurately portrayed. And I was live streaming everything that happened at the time, and I filmed the illegal arrest. The officer who lied under oath never got any accountability.
Never.
So 2 officers fabricated the charges against him. And this guy, cold wake-up call, the cops just made it up. I think that one of the problems we face with a lot of with a lot of what's going on with tyranny is density. Like a lot of the problems that emerge that we complain about in terms of weird progressive cult-like behavior is just density of cities, and then an inability for people to how you deal with 300 violent protesters throwing bottles and rocks at cops. Well, like, this is a group of people doing this. We got to arrest them. Uh-oh. There were 2 guys in there who were wrongly roped in. What do you do? Do you then go through it? Like, what do you do? Check all the phones for videos of everyone? So they just say, we don't care.
Yeah, I think the problems of corruption at the top is due to density too. Because when you know everybody you're working with, all 60 of your people, you have a personal relationship with everybody. You can make sure that everyone's needs are met. That if there's a problem with one of them, it can be dealt with. But if there's 300 million people that you're trying to govern, it just becomes numbers, man.
I mean, that's what Lujan Grisham is doing too, right? She's saying anyone who is interested in having a gun is potentially dangerous, and therefore I'm going to carry this out on all citizens. I mean, it's a complete overreach, and that's similar to the position the cops take. We've decided there's a crisis, and so we don't care about the nuance.
Let's think about it this way. The order that was given by Grisham is that if there's like something like 1,000 deaths, or it's like some capacity, like if there's a number of deaths related to guns, at this number, you can't have a gun there, which basically is Albuquerque and Bernalillo. So think about it this way. Let's say for every 100 citizens you have, every year there's one gun murder. That's a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, but hold on. Let's say that there's a town of 100 people, and every year one person dies in a shooting. It's shocking, but one murder is not going to shock the minds of every single of the town. They're
Well,
going to
in
be
Iceland, they have like 4 murders a year.
and there's substantially less people. So the issue is when if it's what I have to talk about with the scaling problem. If let's say 0.1% of your population is killed in a gun by violence every year. So let's say for every 1,000 people, one person dies. No one's going to blame guns. They're going to say this murder is unconscionable. Now let's say you have 1 million people. Okay, now all of a sudden you've got what 10,000? Am I doing my math wrong? Or 1,000? You have 1,000 deaths. Now you ban guns because there's a gun problem. 1,000 people dying is terrifying, even though it's the same proportionality. So this is the problem of mass density in these cities. It may be that people are probably dying at lower rates, percentage-wise, due to gun violence than ever before, but there's more gun deaths than ever before. There's more people and more guns.
And more media
Right.
in the hands of the mother of the kid that was killed or the cousin of the guy that got shot. Like back in the day, you'd get a news report about it maybe.
Well, so here's the
It would
other
be
thing.
like a police blotter. I remember always checking the police blotter.
Now you get viral Twitter
Yeah.
posts that
But even-
100 million people see and stuff that freaks people out over and over.
And pre-2000, if someone got shot, they're going to die. Your chances of getting paramedics there, you're running to find a payphone. When I was a teenager, I watched a woman have some kind of stroke, and I'm 16, no cell phones. I mean, people had cell phones at the time, but
They weren't ubiquitous, yeah.
right? I had to run into a bank, and it was I run into a bank, and I was like, I need help, and there was a guy speaking. He was, excuse me, we're in the middle of a meeting. I'm like, a lady just collapsed, and then they stand up, and then they called 911 or whatever. But like, if I had a cell phone, like if it's today, I watch someone fall, I go to my phone right away.
Right.
So that you know, but that means you probably have more people dying, like in the 90s, and you could probably see, homicides going down. You actually can because of cell phones. But now, because we have more and more people, she's justifying the amount of people as the reason why to ban guns.
But also, criminals aren't going to care. They're going to carry guns anyway.
Oh, as always. Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.